This is Teenage DC Fan back in the video, and this week we get two fairly parallel stories this week, as the team heads to the 1700s France to stop an encore, and Constantine confronts his past, while it simultaneously catches up with him in a big way. So just a quick warning, spoilers ahead for Ahead of Her Time, the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. So let's dive right in. Legends of Tomorrow has always been one of those shows that can balance the fantastically goofy and brutally dark all in the same episode, and sometimes even the same scene. And Ahead of Her Time was a perfect example of the balance that they have between those two different types of story. And so the team story follows the crew, led by Ava as an intern captain because Sarah is off screen handling some business or whatever. So she left Ava in charge. And they head to France in 1793, I think. And turns out the French Revolution isn't exactly playing out as scheduled. The reason? Marie Antoinette is alive and kicking, with her head reattached and partying it up. And it seems her new lease on life has inspired a plan to involve the brewing revolution. And she invited the revolutionaries to party it up, hit them up with her magic perfume, and now they'll party all night until they're drop dead from exhaustion. Zari, who is back on the ship but still doesn't remember her old life from before the timeline shift, tags along on the mission to help out. And it turns out her lifetime of being a social media influencer and socialite comes in handy when infiltrating a who's who of French royals. So Zari schmoozes her way into the party and even comes up with a plan to lure Marie out and get her secured on the Wave Rider. The plan? Convince her that there's a cooler after party she's missing. And somehow it actually ends up working, though in classic Legends fashion, things go wrong as always. So Marie bangs into a column and her head comes toppling right back off. So with the Legends now holding on to her head and fumbling body in two separate pieces, the Marie story allows Zari 2.0 a chance to do a bit of soul searching as she connects with Marie about simply being on the outside and trying so hard to fit in. And that touching bit is balanced out by Marie's headless body getting loose, grabbing Mick's fire gun, and hilariously chasing him and Ray around the ship for a while. But it's still a good connection there. So this might not be the Zari we knew, but there's more to this version than selling perfume and building her social media brand, and I honestly kind of like this version more. I just feel like she's more of a badass here. But that being said, she's still not perfect, and Zari peeks ahead at her own timeline to see that the perfume she is about to launch is a poisonous failure that will tank her business. So, she steals Marie's magic perfume to use instead, but accidentally spills it on herself, creating a mob of zombie-like admirers chasing her around. But then she learns a lesson, and hey, name a legend who hasn't screwed up the timeline a few times. Am I right? Like, everybody's screwed up the timeline. But as for the darker counterpart to that romp through French history, Constantine is still trying to find a way to help and stop Astra. So his journey took him back to his old stomping grounds, where he finally comes face to face with his old love, Natalie, who's Astra's mother, and she's now a ghost, as Constantine apparently botched an attempt to bring her back from the dead at some point in the past. And we see Constantine faced with the decisions that led him to this point, as Natalie pushes him to admit that he chose magic over her and, well, anyone else, because magic is pretty much his life, and he has nothing else going on in his life other than magic. I mean, he's got Gary, but he pretty much just deals with Gary because he kind of has to. But Natalie also reveals she has a plan to save her daughter, the Loom of Fate. And when I first heard that, I was like, what in the bloody hell is that? So I don't know what that is. But then it turns out our old pal Shapeshifting Charlie was actually a loom and destroyed the mysterious Loom of Fate and scattered the pieces across the multiverse. So, last week I was watching a video about Legends of Tomorrow, and they were talking about how Charlie really doesn't have a big role in here. Like, she just returned to the show after being away for a few episodes, and then she doesn't really do anything. And that was in the last episode. Like, she was just there with Constantine, and like she didn't really do anything. But then I read that she had some kind of big tie to the main villain of the season, who I believe is Astra. So I kind of heard about that last week after I did my review, but yeah. So when the multiverse got slammed back together post-Crisis, those pieces apparently became a whole lot easier to reassemble. So the search is on for the Loom of Fate. But first, there's a bit of a problem. And by a bit of a problem, I mean like a big problem. Like, big problem. Like, this is a huge problem. Because Astra, she's tired of Constantine messing up her plans to take control of Hell. So she calls in a favor and has Constantine's clock cut short. And this part was... I don't know what's going to happen here, because we learned that he's supposed to have 10 more years to live before the lung cancer catches up to him. But his death date is cut to right now, and then he collapses and starts coughing up blood in Gary and Charlie's arms. But as comic fans surely know, Constantine versus lung cancer is a classic story, and it seems we'll actually be getting a version of that on the small screen here. But obviously Constantine can't actually be dead, or maybe he is dead, but he'll come back to life, because there's no way they're going to kill off Constantine, especially at this point. Especially when the main villain of the season is his villain, and all because of him. Like, you have to give the character a chance to fix his mistakes, right his wrongs, and stuff like that. And then if you just kill him off, it's like, well, what was the point of that? Plus, Constantine is one of the best characters on this show. Most of the characters on this show aren't even DC Comics characters, like Zari and Bayrot. I don't believe they're from the comics. Mona, she's not really on here anymore. But Charlie, Gary, Ava, even White Canary technically isn't. So that a bunch of these characters are just made up for the show. And then there's very few that actually are comic characters, like Constantine, Adam, Heatwave, and then Adam's leaving at some point this season. So that's pretty sad to see. But yeah, so it just wouldn't make sense to kill off Constantine. Although they did kill off Rip Hunter in a way that really didn't make sense. And I wish they'd just bring him back. But, yeah. So that was this episode. But next week, Genghis Khan is back and looking to take over the world. And I don't know who Genghis Khan is. Apparently he's some kind of conqueror. And he rides a scooter, I guess. It looked kind of weird in the preview, but this whole show was pretty weird, so nothing new with that. But yeah, overall, this was what happened in the episode. I think this was a fairly good episode. Definitely not as good as last week's episode, because that was probably one of the best episodes of the series. But this one was pretty good, because, like I said, it got to balance out the comedy and the darkness, with two separate storylines. And I mean the whole headless Marie Antoinette, I didn't expect to see that, but it was definitely interesting to see play out on the screen. So yeah, let me know what you thought about this episode down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and hope to see you in the next video so I can bestow all my DC knowledge upon you.